Hello, everyone. Welcome to the brand new episode of our new podcast, The Business Queens. Today, we have charming and amazing Miss Richa Pant on the show. She's the founder of Harmony INC. Hi, Richa. How are you doing today?
Very well, Ishleen. Thank you for having me.
Richa, tell us something about Harmony INC. What do you actually do?
Great. Yes, Ishleen. So basically, Harmony Inc. Bridge between impact seeker and impact innovator. So we started this about 2 years back after, spending close to, again, 17 years in the industry in the CSR and sustainability space. Having worked with both auto ancillary, pharmaceuticals, telecom, and financial services, we felt that it was the opportune time to start practicing CSR and ESG advisory piece for companies which are mid-size and smaller corporates. So what Harmony does is we provide, these consultancy advisory services to those companies who are now having targets like, working towards climate action, working towards financial inclusion, working towards various sustainable development goals. Our specialization includes towards certain sustainable development goals, which includes climate action and responsible consumption production, as well as financial inclusion and women empowerment. So because that has been our specialization in the industry piece. So when we started out, we work on those direction. Besides that, the other service offering that Harmony Inc. has is around building capabilities of grassroots NGOs and corporate foundations on digital financial literacy and entrepreneurship development program for grassroots women entrepreneurs. So again, working towards women entrepreneurship, but at the rural level. Service offerings, we started, like I mentioned, about 2 years back. The idea was to kind of become a synergized ecosystem between the corporates and the foundations, between large corporates and the mid-sized corporates, get them all together and become an ecosystem enabler.
That's amazing, Richa. So, Richa, tell us something. How did you initially involve in this? Like, what was the thing that actually attracted you towards this?
So, Ishleen, something interesting happened during COVID times was that there was a sudden surge on ESG piece. See, I have been in the industry for, like I mentioned, close to 2 decades. And ESG and sustainability was be there in the global markets right from 2008 onwards.
Right.
But during COVID times, the investors globally started focusing on implementing ESG across companies, and they started asking on ESG returns also when they started investing in companies. So it picked up, and the companies that I was working for, I interacted with the global institutional investors, and we saw the pressure coming from there that you need to start looking at developing initiatives around it, have KPIs also, and start raising funds around ESG also. So because there was a lot of investor focus, I felt that it was right time to start. Plus, another important stakeholder, regulator, the regulator also started asking companies to start reporting around it. So one of the main things which led me to start was when SEBI asked companies to start reporting on something called BRSR, which is business reporting on sustainability reporting. So when they started and they made it mandatory for companies, for top 1,000 companies by market cap, I knew that besides these companies, there would be their value chain partners who are going to be smaller firms. But there's not going to be anybody to guide them to do, what are ESG initiatives. They don't even know what ESG means. So there has to be somebody who supports these SMEs and MSMEs who are going to be value chain partners of the larger conglomerates. So the idea was to, again, look at work in that field, build their capabilities so that they can fulfill the climate action targets or, the other S-related targets, which are more on diversity, more on inclusion, those targets, or even G targets, which are governance based. So building their own committees, ensuring that there's a risk management framework around it. So that's what that propelled me to start Harmony Inc. Because there was a ask of investors, there was a ask of regulators. We know that millennial consumers, all these Gen Z ones, are asking when they're joining, as a company on climate action. What is it that you have on diversity? Do you have women on board? Do you have women in top management? Do you have LGBTQ community or not? So because, there's a conscious consumers, there's stakeholders like regulators, investors asking, it was an opportune time during COVID that I said that, now I've, worked with various type of industries. I must start something of my own and let's explore how it goes.
Wonderful. So, what changes have you seen recently? You have the experience of almost 2 decades in this. So, what are the recent changes you have, come encounter in this landscape?
So something interesting, Ishleen, is that that's what when you start up, is when you start demonstrating your work, and that gives you a lot of traction. So I've been working on, like I mentioned, on digital financial literacy, and because of my background in that, and working on women entrepreneurs, and we go to grassroots. So me and my team will go to grassroots. We do those capabilities, and when we share that with the world, we get more traction. So I'm getting a lot of traction on both the digital financial inclusion, on rural entrepreneurship development schemes, and people see that and people start approaching. So I see a lot of NBFCs, I see a lot of fintech firms who are asking us to do these initiatives, and various some of the quasi government organizations also, to take it up in the pan India level. So I see attraction has increased. So within my service offering, if I see, a lot of focus has been on the grassroots, want to reach to Bharat. They've been working in India, but they want to go to the rural landscape and promote the digital financial literacy and EDP part that I mentioned. Now, with regard to sustainability piece, the ESG bit, which is our consultancy offering in that also for MSMEs, SMEs, things are a bit slow. So when I started out, because of the investor pressure and regulatory pressure, we thought that it will be like a fast moving kind of a thing. But of late, post COVID time, post pandemic time, we still see that there's still a slow movement. Although I must say that there are companies reporting on it, but reporting is not sufficient. It's not going to be a green show kind of a thing, or a green washing, or an impact washing. You have to deliver on initiatives, or initiatives may, if you want to initiate start doing it, you have to start making investment around it. So it hits your PNL, right? So companies who are now who've just come back from COVID and starting picking up business, especially MSMEs and SMEs, they find it slightly difficult to kind of invest on ESG because there's a cost factor from their customers or the larger conglomerate. So that bit is, taking some time, but I'm hoping that it will kind of gain momentum because the government is focusing on it. Something interesting, Ishleen, we have COP28 coming in Dubai, which is going to be focusing on climate action, and governments are going to go there and they're going to be evaluating the targets of becoming net zero. PM Modi has taken target of, India becoming net zero by 2070. So there are going to be questions around it. So I think all these questions will help companies to kind of, start delivering on targets, give again a push. So I feel that, in coming next 2-3 years, we will see traction on ESG and sustainability within SMEs and MSMEs. Of course, they would need support in terms of capital, in terms of technology, and as well as skill development. They need people like us to help them build capacities.
Right, right. So when it comes to CSR, there are a lot of companies who already know it because it's something which is there since a lot of time.
Yeah.
But ESG is something which is new. So, most of our audience today are MSMEs and, SME business owners. So I want you to enlighten them about what is ESG exactly and how does it benefit them? Why should they go for it?
Sure. No, like I Ishleen, ESG is environment, social, and governance factors, largely asking companies to take targets on becoming, let's say, carbon neutral, or ensuring that they are water positive, ensuring that their energy emissions are, going down, GHG emissions, carbon emissions are going down, because it is impacting climate, right? And all of us are suffering from that. You know that, our global temperature is rising. So there's going to be, unless and until all of us work together, especially MSMEs and SMEs, which form a large part of our Indian economy, and they are the value chain partners of all these bigger firms. So unless and until they don't work towards it, it will be very difficult for the larger conglomerates, and then therefore the larger economy, to achieve the targets that we're supposed to do. And we will have the suffering of the generation. You know that there's so much of climate change happening every day. I mean, in Mumbai itself, I've been seeing that the winters are not there now. Now
Right.
all these things, or on Delhi also, winters have become fairly reduced, from just I think 1 month or something like that. Now this shows that, and this highly pollution, which is every day there's a news on Delhi's air pollution and Mumbai's air pollution, AQI is high. If we don't kind of work together on it, especially MSMEs and SMEs, it will be very difficult to for us to fulfill that target. So I would suggest that SMEs and MSMEs must have these ESG targets, especially around environment, if they are part of manufacturing. Around services, I would say that they should have targets around S if they are working on financial and tech side, because social targets, again, you need to have people who are working towards diversity. You cannot have only men workforce. You
Right.
must have women, adequate women representation, adequate LGBTQIA representation, because that's something even their customers will ask. See, when if you are a value chain partner of, let's say an L&T or a Tata Group, now they would have targets around ESG because they are taking it, again, being larger conglomerates. Wo sare will get cascaded down to you. Now, if you don't fulfill those targets, maybe you may not get contract again, because sometimes it becomes like a compliance also.
Right.
Give you an example, Ishleen. When I was working with Sonaco Steerings, it was an auto ancillary firm. I remember that, this is in 2008 and 2009. We had a target from a global auto player, and they said that you must talk about, you should have environmental targets. And this is 2008, that you must have greening of supply chain. You can't have, products which are encouraging waste. So then we had to and we were like a not that big firm, so we had to work towards a new product development which will ensure wastage is reduced but also cost effective. And therefore we had to train, as an organization had to train our suppliers. So greening of supply chain was critical. So if there is a pressure coming from customer, now I already mentioned about investor and regulators, we have to start taking up these initiatives, especially around environment, I feel, around diversity, being an equal opportunity employer, ensuring that human rights are not abused. You should not have a child labor in place. All these things, many of them are compliances, so most of them will be adhering it. But these things are becoming more and more critical. One thing which happened during COVID times was a lot of supply from the global companies who actually went out to Vietnam and all, and India suffered because we did not have many of our compliances also, and we were not that active enough. If we want our MSMEs and SMEs to really become active, we need to start following on these ESG norms so that we can also start getting capital and start getting more and more business out of it. So it's very critical for all the MSMEs and SMEs to start thinking about ESG, start at least have a policy, basic steps. We can begin with simple things like having an exclusion list, taking smaller targets. Don't take up like a huge target, which is not possible, because I understand that MSMEs and SMEs have a capital issue, have a technical smaller targets which are doable. Align yourself to your customer focus, like maybe, like I mentioned, larger conglomerate that you're part of. Align to those targets and continuously communicate about it. It's all about communication. आपको बात करना पड़ेगा जो भी आप कर रहे हो, so that your brand gets built. It's all about, Ishleen, you work towards brand building, right? So as an organization, it's very important for you to keep building your brand, show yourself that you are ESG compliant, so that you keep getting business. So that's what I would share for MSMEs and SMEs.
Okay, so tell us one more thing. Are there any KPIs or any matrices that you use to measure the success of their program?
For the ESG initiatives,
Yes.
or for CSR or DFL?
For ESG.
Of course, if you're fulfilling certain targets, or not even fulfilling targets, if you're moving towards the targets, see, there are things like most of the firms take longer ESG targets because it takes time to fulfill that. But when you're taking a longer target, you need to also make Y-on-Y basis that this is what we are going to be achieving, and start reporting on sustainability report or ESG reports, because that means that you're actually delivering, you're doing action around it, and it is not like impact washing or green washing. Otherwise, khali Copcom ke saath milke you can make a jazzy report and it's done. But you need to start taking initiatives. So when the company starts reporting transparently that they have fulfilled targets, or even if state able to fulfill targets because of so and so reason, it shows that the company is being transparent, and there's more, you feel more trust on it. So because investors and regulators, mostly investors or even customers, global customers or even Indian customers nowadays, the Gen Z wants to see companies that are trustworthy. And the more transparent you are about the KPIs that you have put in your sustainability report, whether you are able to do it, or if you're not able to do it, justify that we have not been able to do it rationally, then people feel that, okay, this is a reputed company, we will invest in it, or we will buy products in it. So that's how you need to build your KPIs and put it together. And now KPIs can be spread across all the E, S, and G. It depends upon what sector you belong to. Typically, an extraction based on a manufacturing company would have more around energy emissions, about GHG, reducing GHG emissions, reducing energy, changing from thermal to renewable energy, becoming more water positive company. All these things will be part of around E, reducing your waste management, looking at supply chain partners who are having, zero wastage, or looking at, something around circular economy. These will be part of KPIs for the larger extraction and manufacturing companies, which will flow down to their supply chain partners who are going to be SMEs and MSMEs. Now, the social factor will be higher for financial institutions, technology partners, tech piece. If you see larger conglomerates like IBM and others, they have a lot of social targets also on diversity, inclusion, equity, and inclusion aspects around with, not just like I mentioned, not just women diversity, but LGBTQ community, differently abled. In India, Tatas have targets around affirmative action, inclusion of Dalit and Adivasi into their workforce. So those are targets given. So that will be the S factor. And G factor, like I mentioned, governance is it's the foundation for all companies.
Right.
Right kind of committees in place, board level, board diversity should be there in place. How frequently the board is meeting, how are your ethics, how are your remuneration, what is the parity between your top management CEO and your the feet on street, that kind of parity, compensation parity, are you disclosing that, so these are going to be the KPIs that are typically put up in the sustainability report. And many of the firms also go for ratings, ESG ratings, globally ESG ratings. So many of these, so these are just broad KPIs that I've mentioned. There are micro level ATIs, and in fact, SEBI, the BRSR, gives the leadership indicators and basic indicators, which will give you detailed in depth of what all the companies are evaluated on or they should report on. So depending upon the industry type, you must take your KPIs. And the moment you take your KPIs from a Y-on-Y basis and from a long-term basis, you start reporting about it, start taking initiatives around it. It could be small initiatives. Khali LED light mein change kar diya, that's a change. If you put a sensor on, water and your taps water, that's a change. If you start using recycled water in your flushes, that's a change. If you start having more women workforce around mid management, if you don't have in mid management, that's a change. If you have a few, at least, around your top management also, from, let's say, if you have 1 2, let's say you're raising now about 2, that's okay. At least ek ka badana, but that's a change. So you must start doing these initiatives. Maybe start taking people with differently abled in the front office, if you feel that, or back office, if you feel that, you're not able to take up initiatives like building a ramp and all, because that will involve cost. So agar cost ka factor lag raha hai, to start taking them, but start doing something, show action. And once you start taking action around those KPIs, people have trust, and when your trust means business. So sara wahi game hai.
Yeah. So we are talking about diversity here, and you also work for women empowerment. So
Yeah.
how are they connected with each other, and what are the changes you have witnessed recently? Because what happens with women is, women are doing wonders everywhere, whether it is entrepreneurship or it is their corporate jobs, everything. But there is a challenge with women, which is that their biological clock and their professional clock, they are at the same time. It is the same time they have to get married, and that is the time when their career is at surge. So we as a women, we have to make tough choices. But how can organizations actually help, and I would say assist women, so that they don't have to make those tough choices, that they leave their jobs, stay at home? So what can they actually do to promote this in the workplaces?
That's a very good question, Ishleen, because like you rightly said, we work towards women entrepreneurship, not just in the rural areas and tier 2 towns, but also with the corporates here. When we talk about, taking diversity and increasing their number, many of them are taking initiatives, not just, the bigger firms like the Tatas and Godrej's, they have those, giving a second chance to women. But I also see this, many of the startups, like, and we do something called Impact Travelogue, very much similar to this, in meeting founders and understanding how they started. So one of them, in fact, the fintech startup, they have something called Second Chance, where they give women who had taken maternity leave, not just after 6 months, but even entire year they can take leave, and then they can also kind of start working and have flexi hours. So they are, because if you are a woman who's been performing well and who's been delivering on KPIs and exceeding management's expectation, the companies are now kind of becoming flexible. Thoda sa kam hai momentum, but it is picking up. I see, because I work largely with the financial institution, fintech firms, I see that, a lot of focus has been on, making this flexibility for women if you're a good performer. And even when you start having small kids, helping them identify crashes and giving them that kind of time that, spend some time with the kids and then you fulfill it. And women also, the more they see that the companies are investing like this, having a trust that, they will be able to deliver, they also make adjustments. So we see it's both ways. They see that, okay, because she feels that, there's a sense of loyalty, because she feels that, okay, I've been in this company, I had a child, they were very flexible during my maternity. Now that my child is 2-3 years old, they're still flexible, giving me ample time to, so they become more loyal and therefore help in retention. So the companies have it's actually a business case, Ishleen. If you invest in women, in not just, especially during time when their biological clocks are ticking and they are in the maternity phase, and then you are ensuring that the talent retains, because the loyalty quotient that goes up is tremendous. So so that's the piece on diversity which we are also encouraging, because take not just women just for the number's sake because your investors are asking, but
Yeah.
that it's a business case. It's actually, it will help you. HR faces iteration challenges, but if you invest like this in women, they'll stay longer, they'll perform better, and you won't even, I mean, the kind of business that they'll be able to generate will be tremendous. Or if they're not in business, they are in process function, they'll be extremely efficient and loyal to you. And that's what, is more important. So investing in employees, especially women employees, or, for that matter, people who are differently abled, those who are LGBTQ community, because they are the ones who have, impacted a lot. If you kind of invest in those, they will give you a very good returns. So we see that change is happening. We see that happening not just with conglomerates, but with other fintechs and financial institution firms, because that's what we've been working with. And SMEs should also look into this factor, because attrition is higher there.
Yes.
So, and women generally, and when we see rural women entrepreneurs also, invest in their skills and education, understand that, their family requirements are there, and yet don't give up on them. The loyalty quotient within the corporate foundation and NGOs is also very high. So, yeah, it's important to believe in them, invest in them as a corporate, and support them during those tough times. And then see the results.
Absolutely. And you know what? Recently, what I have witnessed is that the support from their families has also increased. Earlier, if there is any emergency at home, it was always like a woman has to sacrifice, the woman has to compromise, she has to take a leave. Now, even their spouses, their in laws, the people are coming to support them. So, what do you
Yes.
think as a woman? How important is their support system, not only in the terms of,
Very important. Very,
corporates,
very
but
important.
their houses as well?
No, 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 Ishleen, definitely. So I remember, I mean, we've been working towards creating women as change agents in the rural areas in tier 3 towns, so that they can impart, digital financial literacy and other skills to the rural community. But when you have to start taking a woman out of that, when you start training, it's not easy for her, because we live in a highly patriarchal system. And
Right.
it's very important for the family to support that, she's going to become a master trainer, or she's going to be going door to door, because we work in places where there is parda system. So I've seen changes happening when you start investing for 3 or more years, because it takes time for women to build that kind of confidence, especially in the tier 2 or tier 3 towns and rural areas. Train them on technology, give them that kind of knowledge, build their financial capabilities. And once that happens and she feels that she's confident, then talk to their family also, that this is what the role is going to be all about. She's going to go to, various gaon se gaon jayegi. She'll start educating people. You have to not just take their husband into account, but sometimes even children. If children are, teenagers and all, that your mom will be going and she will be doing this. Are you guys okay with it? Most of the time, the children and husbands are very supportive. If she's staying with her family, like in-laws and all, we must talk to the in-laws also, because, and things are changing. It's not, it's I understand that it's a patriarchal system, but things are changing.
Right.
Sometimes you have to invest before starting, also invest more in the support system, and let them know. There would be 1 or 2 cases where they will not be comfortable, but then we have to show long-term change that the woman can bring upon, in there. And once they are convinced, then we see that, and she feels more comfortable and the family is happy, so she can take up those adds on to her confidence again. So it's very critical for us to kind of talk to family, talk to husband, talk to in-laws if she's staying with the joint family, if she's talk to the children, and then kind of, give her that role, so that she can take up and become trainer or start doing her business. at women entrepreneurs. So think from a from your business angle, that if she's the one who's going to be getting business, it will help the entire family. So you have to show that monetary benefit also sometimes, not just kind of a emotional piece, but also monetary benefit that the family itself will get if the woman is trained on certain aspects.
Hmm.
So those aspects help, and then and then family supports it. It takes time though. I mean, the more interiors you go, the more it takes time. The region wise also it depends. South and west we've seen more active. North, certain areas active, but certain areas you have to invest more time. I mean, that happens. I think northeast is pretty in terms of, because again, so if you have a matrilineal culture and all, that helps, in the kind of faster. Obviously, if you are a very hardcore kind, like I mentioned, if there is a pada system, or there's a extremely this thing, then it takes us time to kind of get the woman to come out and start her own business.
But I must say, Richa, you have been doing a wonderful job, and all of this is the need of the hour, not only for women, but I would say for our country at large. Because CSR and ESG is something, the climate is changing, and we must think about our children as well. Like, I
Yes.
would say, if I talk about myself, half of my life would have been gone, by the time, my son would be of my age. What would the climate be at that time? Right now, it's so hot during summers, we cannot survive without putting on the ACs. And
Yeah.
ACs are contributing to the climate change. So we are
Correct.
struggling like anything. So this is something which is absolutely required. So thank you so much for doing that
Thank you,
all.
Ishleen. Yeah.
Okay, so what
Thank you
one
so much.
message would you like to give to our audience today? How should they contribute to ESG and CSR at the individual level?
I think as a conscious, we are all now becoming gradually conscious. So we should start making changes in the everyday habits, whether it is, segregating our waste to dry and wet, whether it is, switching off simple things, simple middle class values, that all Indians had. Start going back to your middle class values, I would say. Carry a, instead of, taking plastic bags, carry something. These are all small changes that we have to do at a local level. If it's possible, start working at a RWA level. If you stay in the societies, that RWA, encourage them to look at things like vermicompost, compost, making compost itself, because all the kachra that we have, you can make a vermicompost, have an organic cure out of it. Start reducing consumption also. I mean, I know, if there are aspirations to grow big and all, that's fine, but materialistic ki jagah, spend more on, if you have good money, spend on experiences. Take your children and let them know that there are people who don't get that kind of, who don't have that kind of money, who are deprived. Otherwise children will not know. They will always take
Yeah.
parents money for advantage. Show them, take them to an NGO, show them that there are kids, there are orphans who don't get those privileges, so give them that kind of sensitivity. So I think these are things that, at the individual level, smaller things which are possible, so that our children are raised in a manner which are more climate conscious, social conscious, don't take parents for granted, not always invested in technology. Give them experiences, like take them to Himalayas and give them those trekking experience, and tell them that not to litter in this beautiful Himalayas. So I think these are things that our generation can do, and all that will help the future generation to learn on these, and take up more initiatives around it.
Mm. Thank you so much, Richa, and it was wonderful to have you on the show today. What is one last message you would like to give to our audience that can stay with them forever?
Last message, I would say that you need to be an individual which is seen as somebody who's creating an impact on our society. So in terms of whether it is becoming a climate champion or a societal champion, have that role in some way or the other. You could be a business person, you could be an employee working for a firm, but there should be a softer aspect which is working towards around either environment and social peace, because that's something which is inherent with all us Indians. Get that middle class values out back, and start working around this, because that will make you a conscious citizen.
That's a powerful message indeed. Thank you so much, Richa, for enlightening us with all about ESG, CSR, and everything. And it is a powerful message indeed. We all of us have to do our bit until
Yeah.
unless we do it ourselves and we wait for others. Nobody is doing it, so I should not do it. Then change could never happen. So thank you so much. This is Ishleen Kaur signing off. See you in the next episode.
Thank you so much, Ishleen. Pleasure. Bye.